What if the most dangerous thing in a billionaire's boardroom isn't a bad trade, a leaked memo, or even a market crash, but a quiet black woman who's been listening for 7 years? It was 3:47 p.m. on a crisp December afternoon in Manhattan, and the 67th floor of Vanguard Tower had gone unnaturally still. 23 of the sharpest financial minds on the planet sat frozen around the obsidian table, mouths half open, eyes wide. At the head of that table, Marcus Hargrove, hedge fund titan, Forbes cover regular, the man who once shorted an entire emerging market currency on a hunch and made $3 billion in 48 hours, looked like someone had just slapped him with a wet towel. In front of him stood Lena Carter. Not an analyst, not a quant, not even a junior portfolio manager. Lena Carter, executive assistant, 34, navy blazer, pearl earrings. The same woman who, every morning for 7 years, had quietly placed his black coffee, no sugar, 2 shots espresso, on the exact right corner of his desk without ever saying more than "Good morning, Mr. Hargrove." And right now, she was holding the single most impenetrable financial chart anyone in that room had ever seen, Hargrove's personal unbreakable test document, like it was last week's grocery list. For minutes and 12 seconds earlier, he had made the offer with a smirk that could cut glass. $2 million. Cash. Wired today. To anyone who can read this chart, interpret every layer, and explain the hidden risks in under 5 minutes. No strings. He had expected silence. Maybe a brave soul or two who would stumble through half of it before folding. What he had not expected was Lena. She had stepped forward from the coffee station without hesitation, heels clicking like a metronome in the sudden hush. Now the timer on his Rolex had just beeped. Lena lowered the chart gently onto the table. Overall implication, she said, voice even, almost conversational. The book is 1.4 times levered to a soft landing narrative. But the tail hedges are cross-contaminated. Vega is mispriced by at least 40 basis points. If inflation ticks up 0.2 or the Fed pauses, we're looking at a $1.2 billion mark-to-market hole in under 6 weeks. That number isn't printed anywhere on this page. It lives in the interaction between the 3 panels. She met his eyes. Time, 4 minutes, 12 seconds. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Someone in the back muttered, "Jesus." Hargrove's smile twitched, then died completely. The color drained from his face in slow motion, like watching a screen fade to black. He forced a laugh. It came out brittle. "Well, that was impressive, Lena." He leaned forward, elbows on the table, trying to reclaim the oxygen in the room. "But let's be honest. You've obviously been coached. Someone fed you the key assumptions. This isn't possible otherwise." Lena tilted her head, just a fraction. "I've sat outside your office during every risk committee meeting for 7 years, Mr. Hargrove. I transcribe the calls. I file the models. I read the drafts before you sign them. I listen when people think no one is paying attention." She paused. "And I remember." Another beat of silence. Hargrove's fingers drummed once, twice, on the glass. Then he sat back, forcing the grin again. "Of course. $2 million. We'll have legal draw up the paperwork. Private transfer. Discreet." Lena didn't move. "You made the offer in front of 23 witnesses and 4 security cameras," she said quietly. "The offer was public. So should the payment be." A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. Hargrove's jaw tightened. He stood slowly, buttoning his suit jacket, as if the motion could restore order. "Fine," he said, voice clipped. "End of day. Wired. You have my word." He looked around the table, daring anyone to speak. No one did. As people began to rise, slowly, carefully, like they were leaving a crime scene, several pairs of eyes lingered on Lena. Some were wide with awe. Some were worried. A few hopeful. Lena gathered her legal pad and pen. She walked past Hargrove without hurry, paused at the door, and turned back once. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Hargrove." Then she was gone. The door closed with a soft, final click. Outside, the Manhattan skyline glittered, indifferent. Inside, the air still smelled faintly of espresso and something new. Something that felt dangerously like the beginning of a reckoning. And Marcus Hargrove, for the first time in many years, did not know what came next. The chart that changed everything ***. The silence in the boardroom didn't break so much as shatter, like glass that had been holding its breath for 7 years. Lena Carter stood motionless at the head of the table, the chart still open in front of her like an accusation no one wanted to acknowledge. 23 pairs of eyes remained glued to the page she had just dissected with surgical calm. No one dared blink too hard, as if movement might make what just happened disappear. Marcus Hargrove sat perfectly still, the only sign of life the slow tightening of his knuckles around the arms of his chair. The Rolex on his wrist caught the overhead light and threw it back in tiny, mocking flashes. 4 minutes and 12 seconds. That was all it had taken. Not for her to stumble. Not to guess. Not even to impress. To destroy. He had built that chart himself over 3 sleepless nights in his Tribeca penthouse, layering in every trap he could think of, contradictory volatility assumptions, deliberately mislabeled correlation coefficients, a nested autocallable whose payoff curve inverted exactly where most people would stop looking. It was his private joke, his emperor's new clothes for the room full of overpaid geniuses who thought they understood risk. And she had read it like a children's book. Lena finally spoke again, voice soft but carrying to every corner of the room. I believe the terms were clear, Mr. Hargrove. $2 million. Wired today. No strings. The words landed like stones in still water. Ripples spread outward. A junior analyst shifted uncomfortably. A senior quant coughed. Someone near the window actually took a half step back, as if the air had grown too heavy. Hargrove forced his mouth into what he hoped looked like a smile. Of course, he said, the words scraping out drier than he intended. Impressive work, Lena. Truly. But let's not rush. 2 million is significant. We'll need to verify. Verify what? Came a quiet voice from the far side of the table. It was Priya Patel, one of the firm's top risk officers and the only person in the room who had ever publicly disagreed with Hargrove and kept her job. She hadn't moved, but her eyes were locked on him. You offered. She accepted. She delivered. The chart is still there. The timer is still running on your phone. A few heads nodded, small, almost involuntary movements. Hargrove's gaze flicked to the security cameras in the corners. Red lights blinked steadily. Everything had been recorded. Every word. Every second. He exhaled through his nose, the sound sharp. Fine, he said again, this time louder, as if volume could restore control. Legal will handle the transfer. We'll schedule a private meeting to finalize. Lena cut in, still calm, still polite, but with steel underneath. With respect, sir, you said, wired today. You said no strings. You said it in front of all of us. She gestured lightly toward the room. And we all heard it. The temperature dropped another 5 degrees. Hargrove stood slowly. The chair rolled back with a soft hiss. He walked around the table, stopping just short of where Lena stood. Close enough that she could smell the cedar of his cologne, close enough that the rest of the room could see the vein pulsing at his temple. You're an assistant, Lena, he said, voice low, almost intimate. You've been invaluable. But this. He tapped the chart once, hard enough to make the paper jump. This is not your lane. Someone put you up to this. Admit it, and we can all walk away with our dignity. Lena looked up at him. Not defiant. Not angry. Just steady. No one put me up to anything, she said. I've been in this building every weekday for 7 years. I've made your coffee, scheduled your calls, filed your trades, listened to your strategy sessions through the door when you thought it was closed. I read the drafts. I saw the revisions. I watched the numbers move. And I remembered. She paused. That's all. Hargrove's jaw worked. For a heartbeat, the room thought he might actually shout. Instead, he laughed, a short, barking sound that fooled no one. Touching, he said. But memory isn't proof. We'll need to investigate this extraordinary performance. He turned to the room. Meeting adjourned. Everyone out. Lena, stay. No one moved. Not at first. Then Priya stood. Slowly. Deliberately. "I think," she said, "we should all stay until the wire confirmation hits our phones." A ripple of agreement moved through the analysts. Quiet murmurs, heads nodding. Hargrove's face flushed red. "This is my firm," he said, voice rising for the first time. "My rules." Lena spoke again, almost gently. "You made a rule today, Mr. Hargrove. In public. In front of cameras. You said anyone." She looked around the room. "They're still here." The silence that followed was different this time. Not stunned. Not afraid. It was the silence of people realizing the ground had shifted beneath them, and that the person who had done the shifting was the quiet woman who had never once asked for the spotlight. Hargrove stared at Lena for a long moment. Then he reached for his phone. "Get me legal," he snapped to no one in particular. "Now." As the room began to empty, slowly, reluctantly, Lena remained where she was, hands folded in front of her. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply waited, because 7 years of listening had taught her one thing above all others. The most powerful moves are the ones made in silence. And right now, the entire 67th floor was listening to hers. The reckoning had only just begun. The elevator doors closed on the 67th floor with the softest hush, the kind reserved for hospitals and crime scenes. Inside the boardroom, 23 people remained seated. No one had left. Not a single chair had scraped backward. Not a phone had been pulled out to text the news. They simply sat, breathing shallow, watching the space where Lena Carter had stood moments earlier, like witnesses to something irreversible. Marcus Hargrove was still standing at the head of the table, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in clipped, furious whispers to legal. "Yes. Now. I don't care about the time zone in Cayman. Get the compliance team on this line in the next 60 seconds. He hung up without waiting for a reply. The room stayed silent. Priya Patel broke it first, quietly, almost conversationally. "So," she said, folding her arms, "do we wait for the wire confirmation before we adjourn? Or do we start drafting the press release about how the firm just paid $2 million to an executive assistant for reading a chart better than all of us combined?" A nervous laugh escaped someone near the window. It died instantly. Hargrove turned slowly, eyes narrowing. "This isn't a circus, Priya. This is my firm. And right now we're dealing with an internal matter." "An internal matter," Priya repeated, tasting the words. "You offered $2 million to anyone in the room." She was in the room. She delivered. The cameras recorded it. The audio is crystal clear. Unless you're planning to claim coercion, hallucination, or alien mind control, I'm not sure what internal matter we're dealing with. More heads nodded, small, reluctant, but unmistakable. A young quant, barely 2 years out of MIT, raised his hand like he was still in class. Sir? The chart. It's still up on the screen. And she was right about the Vega mispricing. I just checked the live book. The tail hedge is showing 38 basis points of negative carry today alone. If she's off, it's not by much. Hargrove's gaze snapped to the screen. The numbers were there, blinking red in real time. He exhaled through his teeth. "Then fix it," he snapped. "That's what you're paid for." The quant blinked. But she already explained how to fix it. In 4 minutes. The silence returned, thicker, heavier, almost suffocating. Hargrove looked around the table. He saw it in their faces. Not rebellion, not yet. But doubt. The kind of doubt that spreads like damp rot once it takes root. He straightened his tie. A small, deliberate gesture. The kind he used before walking into a CNBC interview. "Lena Carter has been a valued member of this team for 7 years, he said, voice smoothing into the practiced cadence of a man who had talked his way out of worse. "Clearly talented. Clearly observant. We'll honor the spirit of the challenge. But $2 million is not pocket change. We'll conduct a proper review. Verify her work. Ensure there was no external assistance." He paused, letting the implication hang. Priya tilted her head. "External assistance," she echoed. "You mean coaching? You mean someone fed her the answers?" Exactly. Priya smiled, thin, cold, professional. Then you'll need to explain why this same chart has been sitting in the shared drive for the last 14 months. Marked confidential, risk committee only. Accessible to anyone with executive assistant clearance. Which Lena has. Hargrove's face went very still. You're suggesting, I'm suggesting, Priya cut in, that the person who designed the trap forgot the trap was visible to the woman who organizes the meetings where the trap was discussed. A low murmur moved through the room. Not approval. Recognition. Hargrove's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, legal calling back. He answered on speaker, not caring who heard. Tell me we can void this. The voice on the other end was careful, measured. Sir, the offer was verbal, public, recorded, witnessed by multiple employees. There's no coercion clause, no fine print mentioned. The challenge was framed as binding. If we contest it now, especially after performance, we open ourselves to breach of contract claims, potential SEC scrutiny for misleading statements, and significant reputational damage. Hargrove's grip on the phone turned white-knuckled. Then find a way. Sir, the only clean path is to pay. The line went quiet. Hargrove ended the call, without a word. He looked at the empty chair where Lena had stood. Then at the chart still glowing on the screen. Then at the faces watching him. Faces that had always looked to him for certainty, for direction, for the next big trade. Now they looked at him like they were waiting to see what a man who had just lost control of his own room would do next. He cleared his throat. Meeting is adjourned, he said, voice flat. Legal will handle the transfer. End of discussion. People rose slowly, gathering laptops and folders, casting glances back at the chart as they filed out. Priya was the last to stand. She paused at the door, turned back. Marcus, she said quietly, using his first name for the first time in 6 years. You wanted to see who was brilliant enough to read your mind. Be careful what you wish for. Then she was gone. The boardroom emptied. The lights dimmed automatically to energy-saving mode. Only the chart remained, bright against the dark glass, its lines and numbers glowing like evidence that refused to fade. Down on the 42nd floor, in her small cubicle near the copy machine, Lena Carter sat at her desk. She opened her laptop, pulled up her personal email, typed one line to her older sister in Atlanta. Today was interesting. She hit send. Then she closed the laptop, leaned back at her chair, and for the first time in 7 years, allowed herself the smallest, quietest exhale. Because the silence in the tower above her, it wasn't peaceful anymore. It was listening, and it had just learned her name. The wire confirmation never came. Not by 5 p.m. Not by 7 p.m. Not even by the time the cleaning crew arrived on the 67th floor and found the lights still blazing, the chart still glowing on the screen like a crime scene that refused to be cleaned up. Lena Carter left the building at 6:42 p.m., the same time she always did. She rode the subway home to Brooklyn, sat in her usual corner seat, and stared at the dark tunnel windows without really seeing them. Her phone stayed silent. No notification from the bank. No triumphant buzz from colleagues. Just the low rumble of the train and the faint metallic taste of adrenaline still lingering on her tongue. Upstairs, in the executive suite, Marcus Hargrove stood alone at the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the city lights smear across the glass like wet paint. His phone rang. He answered without looking. Tell me it's done, he said. The voice on the other end belonged to Daniel Voss, head of internal legal, a man who had spent 15 years making impossible problems disappear for very wealthy people. It's not done, Marcus. And it can't be done quietly. Hargrove's reflection in the glass tightened. Explain. You made a verbal, unconditional offer in front of 23 witnesses for cameras and a live audio feed that's already been backed up to the cloud. She performed. The performance was verifiable. Several analysts have already confirmed her read was accurate down to the decimal. If we don't pay, she can file a breach of contract claim tomorrow morning. Discovery would be unpleasant. Emails, meeting notes, the chart itself, all discoverable. Hargrove exhaled, fogging the glass. Then pay her. Quietly. Offshore if necessary. I don't care. That's the other problem, Voss said carefully. She already told you she wants it public. She referenced the witnesses. The cameras. If we wire it privately and she speaks out, and trust me, she will, it looks like we tried to bury it. That's not just a lawsuit. That's a PR disaster. A racial optics nightmare. A powerful white billionaire stiffs brilliant black woman. Headline waiting to happen. Hargrove turned from the window. His face was calm, but the skin around his eyes had gone tight. So, what do you suggest? Voss hesitated. Rare for him. Pay her. Publicly. Acknowledge the challenge. Frame it as a celebration of internal talent. Spin it as your idea all along. Make her the hero of your meritocracy story. Hargrove laughed once, low and bitter. You want me to celebrate her? I want you to survive this, Voss said. Because if you don't pay, she won't need to sue. She'll just talk. And people are already talking. Hargrove glanced at his second monitor. The internal Slack channels were alive. Not loud. Not mutinous. But active. Hashtag general. Did y'all see what Lena did? Hashtag wrist desk. She called the Vega bleed exactly. We're adjusting the book tonight because of her. Hashtag analysts only. Is he really not paying her? He closed the monitor. Draft the statement, he said. I'll sign it. But make it clear this was a one-time stunt. No precedent. He hung up. Then he opened his personal email and typed one line to his chief of staff. Find out everything about Lena Carter. Family. Education. Social media. Debts. Anything. Send. He hit enter. Down in Brooklyn, Lena's phone finally buzzed. Not the bank. Not Hargrove. A text from Priya Patel. They're stalling. Don't sign anything they send you privately. We have your back. Lena stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back one word. Understood. She set the phone down, walked to her small kitchen table, and opened her laptop. She didn't check her bank account. She didn't refresh the news. Instead, she pulled up the firm's internal document archive. Searched for Talent Challenge, December 2025. Downloaded every version of the chart, every email thread, every meeting agenda that had referenced it over the past 14 months. She saved them to an encrypted external drive. Then she closed the laptop, leaned back in her chair, and looked out at the streetlights flickering through her window. The first lie had been spoken. Not by her. By the man who thought $2 million could buy silence. But silence, Lena knew, was never for sale. Especially not when 7 years of listening had taught her exactly how loud the truth could become when it finally decided to speak. And tonight, the truth had just taken its first breath. The next morning, the 67th floor felt different. Not louder. Not chaotic. Just watchful. Analysts arrived earlier than usual. Coffee cups were held tighter. Conversations in the hallway dropped to whispers the moment anyone from executive row appeared. The chart from yesterday had been taken down from the main screen, but screenshots were already circulating in private group chats. Annotated, dissected, shared with the kind of quiet reverence usually reserved for religious texts. Lena arrived at 7:58 a.m., same as always. She walked past security with the same polite nod, took the same elevator to the 42nd floor, hung her coat on the same hook, and sat at her desk. Her inbox had 147 unread messages. Most were from colleagues she barely spoke to. Thank you. Did you really do that? I've been waiting 7 years for someone to say what you did. I'm with you. She didn't reply to any of them. Instead, she opened her calendar and blocked out the next 3 hours. Personal appointment, do not disturb. Then she picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in almost 2 years. It rang twice. Carter. Came the gruff, familiar voice on the other end. Thought you'd forgotten my number. Malik Thompson. Former head of mailroom operations at Hargrove Capital. Retired at 58 after 32 years in the building. The man who had taught Lena, on her very first day, how to spot the difference between a real signature and a scanned forgery. The man who had once told her, half joking, half serious, "They'll never see you coming, kid. That's your superpower." "Malik," she said, "I need a favor." A low chuckle. Girl, you never ask for favors. Must be big. It is. She told him everything, short, precise, no embellishment. When she finished, there was a long pause. Then, you kept the recordings? Every meeting I sat outside. Every time the door was cracked. Every time someone thought the assistant wasn't listening. Malik whistled low. You're a dangerous woman, Lena Carter. I'm just organized. Send me what you've got. Encrypted. I still know people in compliance who hate Hargrove more than they love their bonuses. They'll look without asking questions. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This ain't over till the money clears and the headlines fade. She hung up. Before she could set the phone down, it buzzed again. Priya Patel. Lena answered immediately. They're drafting a private settlement offer. Priya said without preamble. NDA, non-disparagement, $500,000 cash plus a promotion to senior administrative specialist. They're calling it generous. Lena's voice didn't waver. And if I refuse? They'll drag it out. Claim due diligence. Leak stories that you were prepped or had insider help. They're already planting the seed with a couple of friendly reporters. A beat. Then we plant a bigger seed, Lena said. Priya exhaled. I was hoping you'd say that. There was a soft knock at Lena's cubicle. She looked up. Jamal Reyes, the overnight IT security lead, stood there holding a small flash drive. He was 26, nervous around executives, but fearless around code. Thought you might need this, he said quietly, sliding the drive across her desk. Last night's boardroom footage. Full audio. Full video. Unedited. Before they tried to archive it. Lena took the drive. Their fingers brushed for half a second. Thank you, Jamal. He shrugged, cheeks flushing. You've covered for me more times than I can count. Late logins. Forgotten passwords. This is nothing. He hesitated, then added, There's more. Someone from PR tried to pull the file this morning at 4:17 a.m. I flagged it as suspicious activity. It's still there. For now. Lena nodded once. Jamal disappeared down the hallway as quietly as he'd come. She slipped the drive into her bag. Then she opened a new email. To Margaret Hale, investigative journalist, retired, but never really retired. Subject. Something you might want to hear. She attached nothing. Just wrote one line. Can we meet? Off the record. Until it isn't. She hit send. By 11 a.m., the whispers had grown legs. A junior analyst forwarded the chart screenshot to a friend at Bloomberg with a caption, This happened yesterday. You won't believe who read it. A compliance officer leaked the internal memo suggesting review of the challenge validity to a private Slack group of disillusioned employees. And somewhere in Midtown, a retired journalist opened her email, read one line, and smiled the slow, dangerous smile of someone who had spent 40 years waiting for the right story to fall into her lap. Lena closed her laptop. She stood, smoothed her blazer, and walked to the elevator. As the doors opened on the lobby level, she stepped out into the winter light. No fanfare. No cameras. No announcement. Just a woman who had spent 7 years in the shadows. Now the shadows were moving with her. And Marcus Hargrove, high above the city, had no idea how many quiet allies had just chosen a side. The first lie had been told. The second one was coming. And this time the truth had friends. The first public crack appeared at 8:17 a.m. the next morning. Not on Bloomberg. Not on CNBC. Not even on the Wall Street Journal app. It appeared on LinkedIn. A single post from an anonymous account, profile picture, a black silhouette against a white background, name, Concerned Insider. Yesterday, a black executive assistant at a major hedge fund read a chart that no senior analyst could touch. The Billionaire founder offered $2 million on the spot. She delivered in under 5 minutes. Now the firm is stalling the payment and whispering about coaching. This is what meritocracy looks like when it actually happens. #finance, #talent, #justice. The post had 47 likes in the first hour. By noon, 3,200. By 3 p.m., it had been screenshot, shared to private Slack channels, Reddit's r/Wall Street Bets, and a dozen anonymous finance Twitter accounts. No names. No firm mentioned. But anyone who worked in Manhattan finance knew exactly which tower it was pointing at. Inside Hargrove Capital, the 67th floor had become a pressure cooker with the vents closed. Marcus Hargrove sat in his office, blinds drawn, staring at a wall of monitors showing the spreading digital wildfire. His chief of staff stood across the desk, pale. "It's contained for now," she said. "No mainstream outlet has picked it up. We can kill it with a denial and a generous, anonymous donation story." Hargrove didn't look up. "Contained," he repeated softly. "The chart is everywhere. Screenshots are being dissected on quant forums. My own analysts are liking the post from burner accounts. Contained is the opposite of what this is." He spun his chair to face her. "Find out who started it." She hesitated. "We're already running IP traces. But it's bouncing through VPNs. Could be anyone." Hargrove's voice dropped. "Then tighten the net. Audit every email, every file download from yesterday. Pull phone records. If Lena Carter so much as breathed a word to a reporter." A soft knock interrupted. Daniel Voss, head of legal, entered without waiting for permission. He carried a slim folder and looked like he hadn't slept. "We have a bigger problem," he said, placing the folder on the desk. Hargrove opened it. Inside, printed emails, meeting notes, a timeline, all time-stamped, all showing that the Talent Challenge chart had been uploaded to the shared drive 14 months earlier. Marked confidential, risk committee only. Accessible to anyone with executive assistant permissions. Lena's name appeared in the access log 17 times, each time she had filed, revised, or printed versions for Hargrove himself. Voss tapped the top page. She didn't need coaching. She had the source material. For over a year. Hargrove closed the folder slowly. "Then we bury it," he said. "Classify the entire challenge as an internal test. Say the $2 million was hyperbole. Offer her $250,000 as a performance bonus." Quietly, Voss shook his head. "Too late. We just received a preservation letter from a law firm in Brooklyn. They're representing Lena Carter. They want all communications related to the challenge preserved for potential litigation. They've also requested the boardroom footage." Hargrove's eyes narrowed. "She lawyered up?" "Overnight," Voss said. "And not just any lawyer. The firm specializes in whistleblower and employment discrimination cases. They've already filed a motion to compel production of the video if we don't comply voluntarily." Hargrove stood. "Counter with a gag order. Threaten her career. She's an assistant. She needs this job." Voss looked uncomfortable. "We can try, but there's more." He pulled out his phone and played a short audio clip. Lena's voice, calm and clear. "You made the offer in front of witnesses. The offer was public. So should the payment be." The recording ended. "That's from the boardroom," Voss said. "Someone leaked it internally. It's already on a private Telegram channel with 1,800 finance professionals. If it hits Twitter..." Hargrove's fist clenched. "Find a leaker. Fire them. Today." Voss nodded, but his expression said he knew it wouldn't stop the bleeding. As Voss left, Hargrove opened his desk drawer and pulled out the encrypted drive he kept for emergencies. He plugged it in and searched for Lena Carter's personnel file. Education, community college, then night classes at NYU Stern. Family, older sister in Atlanta, single mother who passed away 5 years ago. No criminal record. No social media presence beyond a locked LinkedIn. Clean. Too clean. He stared at the photo attached to her file. Professional headshot, small smile, pearl earrings. The same woman who had just turned his empire into a house of cards with 4 minutes and 12 seconds of quiet truth. Outside his office, the whispers had grown into murmurs. Down on the 42nd floor, Lena sat at her desk, phone in hand. A new text from Priya. "They're auditing downloads. They're coming for you." Lena typed back. "Let them come." She opened her email and forwarded the entire encrypted drive, every document, every recording, every access log, to the law firm in Brooklyn. Then she stood, smoothed her blazer, and walked to the copy room. As she passed the elevators, she heard someone whisper her name. Not with fear, with respect. The paper trail had been laid, and every step Marcus Hargrove took now was on fire. 3 days after the challenge, the 67th floor had become a stage nobody wanted to stand on. The firm's PR team had tried everything: a bland internal memo about celebrating internal talent, a quiet donation to a financial literacy nonprofit in Lena's name, even a carefully worded statement to select reporters claiming the $2 million offer was a motivational figure of speech. None of it stuck. The internet had already decided the story. A mid-tier finance blog had picked up the LinkedIn post and run with it. Hedge fund billionaire offers $2 million challenge. Black assistant reads the chart in 4 minutes. Now he won't pay. The article had 1.2 million views in 48 hours. Bloomberg followed. CNBC ran a segment. A viral clip of the leaked boardroom audio, Lena's calm voice slicing through Hargrove's stunned silence, had been remixed into TikTok soundtracks with captions like, "When the assistant schools the boss," and "Quiet power hits different." Marcus Hargrove's phone hadn't stopped ringing. Board members, major investors, regulators politely requesting clarification on the firm's compensation practices. He sat in his office, blinds open for the first time in days, staring at the skyline like it owed him an explanation. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Hargrove," his assistant said nervously. "They're ready in conference room A. The public evaluation." He exhaled. The board had made the call the night before. If they were going to be dragged into the spotlight, they would control it. So they scheduled a public reevaluation of the challenge. Live streamed on the firm's YouTube channel, moderated by an independent compliance expert. Cameras, press, investors watching from their private terminals. Hargrove had fought it, lost. Now he had to sit there and watch Lena Carter, again, turn his empire into a spectacle. The conference room had been transformed. A long table at the front, microphones, bright lights, rows of chairs for press and invited guests. A massive screen behind the moderators displaying the infamous chart in high resolution. Lena arrived at 9:45 a.m., escorted by her lawyer and Priya Patel. She wore the same navy blazer, same pearl earrings. No notes. No nerves visible. She took her seat at the head table, folded her hands, and waited. Hargrove entered last. He walked in like a man entering a courtroom he knew he'd already lost. He sat at the far end, flanked by 2 lawyers who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. The moderator, a stern woman from an independent ethics firm, opened the session. "Today we revisit the talent challenge issued by Mr. Hargrove on December 12th. The challenge: correctly read and interpret the provided chart in under 5 minutes for a $2 million prize." Ms. Carter accepted and performed. "We are here to verify her interpretation publicly and transparently." She turned to Lena. "Ms. Carter, are you ready?" Lena nodded once. "Whenever you are." The moderator signaled. The chart appeared on the screen, same as before, every line, every footnote, every trap glowing under the lights. The moderator started the timer. Lena began. She spoke clearly, unhurried, her voice carrying through every microphone. Top panel, yield curve steepener with embedded vol smile. The convexity bias is skewed positive by 14 bps, implying a 68% probability of a Fed pivot, but only if core PCE stays below 2.8%. Footnote 17 hides the assumption. She moved down. Middle. Correlation matrix. WTI VIX 3-month rolling has broken 0.72. The tail hedge is now procyclical. Not protection, amplification. Bottom right. Exotic. Basket autocallable with 1.8x leverage kicker. Negative gamma beyond observation 3. Stress test in column H assumes only 15% equity drawdown. Optimistic at best. She lifted her hand. Overall, 1.4x levered soft landing. Vega mispriced 40 bps. Potential $1.2 billion loss in 6 weeks if inflation ticks. She looked at the moderator. Time, 4 minutes, 9 seconds. The timer beeped. The room was dead silent. Then applause, slow at first, then swelling. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras zoomed in. Hargrove sat motionless. The moderator cleared her throat. Mr. Hargrove, do you contest Miss Carter's interpretation? Hargrove's voice was low, controlled. No. A ripple moved through the room. The moderator turned back to Lena. Miss Carter, is there anything else you'd like to add? Lena looked directly into the camera. I accepted the challenge because I believed the offer was real. I performed because the work deserved to be understood. And I'm here today because promises matter, even when they're made by powerful people. She paused. $2 million. Wired today. Publicly. As promised. The moderator looked at Hargrove. He stared at the table for a long moment. Then he lifted his head. Wire it, he said quietly. The room exhaled. But Lena wasn't finished. She turned to the moderator. And I'd like the firm to commit to an independent audit of its risk practices. Publicly. So no one else has to prove themselves twice. Hargrove's eyes met hers. For the first time, he didn't look away. The cameras caught every second. Outside the building, the city kept moving. Inside, under the lights, something irreversible had just happened. The stage had been set. And the spotlight, finally, belonged to the woman who had never asked for it. But now, everyone was watching. The live stream ended at 11:42 a.m. By 11:45, the wire confirmation hit Lena's bank account. $2 million. Exact. Publicly announced in the moderator's closing statement, Mr. Hargrove has honored his commitment. The funds have been transferred. The chat exploded. But inside Hargrove Capital, the real storm was just beginning. Marcus Hargrove walked out of conference room A without a word. No handshake. No photo op. No forced smile for the cameras. He disappeared into the private elevator, doors closing on a face that looked 10 years older than when the day began. Down on the 42nd floor, Lena returned to her desk. She didn't celebrate. She didn't call anyone. She simply sat, opened her email, and began drafting a single message to HR. Effective immediately, I am taking 2 weeks of accrued leave. I will return on January 6th. She hit send. Then she logged out of her workstation. And for the first time in 7 years, she walked out of the building before lunch. The reckoning didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived in quiet conversations. In the break room on the 55th floor, a group of junior analysts gathered around a laptop. One of them, a young black woman named Aisha, spoke first. She didn't even smile when they wired the money. She just left, like it was nothing. Another analyst, a white man in his late 20s, nodded slowly. She didn't need the spotlight. She just needed them to keep their word. Across the hall, in risk management, Priya Patel sat at her desk and quietly forwarded the boardroom footage, along with every internal email chain referencing the challenge, to the firm's independent ethics committee. She attached one note. For your review. Transparency matters. By 2 p.m., junior staffers were meeting in small groups, hallways, stairwells, the outdoor terrace on the 40th floor. They weren't plotting rebellion. They were asking questions. Why did it take a leak for him to pay? Why was the chart accessible to assistants, but not flagged as a conflict? Why do we keep pretending meritocracy exists when the boss can just change the rules? The questions spread like soft footsteps in a library. No one shouted. No one posted publicly. But the doubt was there. And once doubt takes root in a place built on certainty, it doesn't leave quietly. Up on the 67th floor, Hargrove sat alone in his office. His phone buzzed with missed calls, board members, investors, reporters. He ignored them all. Instead, he opened his personal email and typed a short message to the chairman of the board. I will be taking a leave of absence starting next week. Effective immediately. Recommend interim leadership from Priya Patel until a permanent decision is made. He hit send. Then he leaned back in his chair and stared at the skyline. For the first time in 20 years, the view didn't feel like his. Down in Brooklyn, Lena sat at her small kitchen table with a cup of tea she hadn't touched. Her phone lit up with a text from her sister. You okay? Saw the news. 2 million. Damn, girl. Lena smiled just a little. She typed back. I'm fine. Just breathing. She set the phone down. Outside her window, the city moved on. Buses rumbling, people walking, lights flickering to life as evening crept in. Inside, the reckoning was quieter than anyone expected. No protests. No viral speeches. Just ordinary people asking ordinary questions. And in the asking, something shifted. Not with noise. With the slow, inevitable weight of people deciding they'd heard enough silence. And that kind of reckoning? It doesn't end. It only begins. The wire transfer had been the easy part. $2 million moved in seconds. Clean, public, announced on the live stream for the entire world to see. But money is just numbers on a screen. What followed was something far heavier. Marcus Hargrove didn't resign dramatically. There was no tearful press conference, no defiant statement, no golden parachute announcement splashed across the front page of the Financial Times. He simply walked into the boardroom on a gray Tuesday morning in early January and placed a single sheet of paper on the mahogany table. It was short. 3 paragraphs. Effective immediately. Marcus Hargrove steps down as CEO and chairman of Hargrove Capital. Interim leadership to be assumed by Priya Patel. A search committee will be formed for a permanent successor. He didn't read it aloud. He didn't explain. He just signed it, dated it, and slid it toward the chairman. The boardroom was quiet. Only 7 people present, no cameras, no leaks. The chairman looked at the paper for a long moment. You're sure? Hargrove met his eyes. I'm tired of being the story. He stood, buttoned his coat, and left the room without another word. The announcement went out that afternoon, terse, professional, buried in the middle of the firm's press release section. No fanfare. No mention of the challenge. No apology. But the timing spoke louder than any statement ever could. Down on the 42nd floor, Lena returned from her 2-week leave on January 6th. She walked in at 7:58 a.m., same as always. Same navy blazer. Same pearl earrings. Same quiet steps. The difference was in the eyes that followed her. No whispers now. No sideways glances. People nodded. Some smiled, small, genuine smiles. A few said, "Good morning, Lena," with the kind of warmth usually reserved for old friends. She sat at her desk, logged in, and found a single new email waiting. From Marcus Hargrove. Subject: no body. Just an attachment. She opened it. A single page. A formal letter. To Lena Carter. From Marcus Hargrove. I was wrong. Not just about the chart. About everything. You earned more than $2 million that day. You earned respect I should have given you years ago. I'm stepping down. Not because I was forced. Because I finally listened. The firm will be better without me in the way. Thank you for reminding me what merit actually looks like. He signed it by hand, scanned signature, ink slightly smudged, as if he'd hesitated before pressing the pen to paper. Lena read it twice. Then she closed the email. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Across the city, the news cycle had already moved on. A new scandal in Washington. A crypto crash. A celebrity divorce. But inside Hargrove Capital, the change was quieter and deeper. Junior analysts started speaking up in meetings. Risk officers began challenging assumptions without fear. The culture didn't flip overnight, but the air felt different. Lighter. More honest. Priya Patel, now interim CEO, called Lena into her office that afternoon. She closed the door. I'm not going to ask you to stay in this role, Priya said. You've done enough. Lena smiled just a little. I like my desk, she said. And I like knowing where the coffee is. Priya laughed softly. Then stay. But on your terms. No more fetching coffee for anyone who doesn't earn it. Lena nodded. They shook hands, firm, equal. As Lena walked back to her desk, she passed the elevator bank. A young intern, new, nervous, black, stood there clutching a stack of files. He looked up. Miss Carter, he asked quietly. She stopped. I read about what you did, he said. I just wanted to say thank you for showing us we can speak up. Lena looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, very gently, you don't need my permission to speak. You never did. The intern blinked back tears. Lena gave him the smallest nod and continued walking. Behind her, the elevator doors opened. She stepped inside alone. The doors closed. And for the first time in 7 years, Lena Carter rode the elevator not as an assistant, but as someone who had changed the view from the top floor forever. Marcus Hargrove, somewhere in the city, watched the skyline from a different window. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He simply nodded once to no one in particular. A final, quiet acknowledgement. The reckoning was over. But the listening? That had only just begun. 6 months later, the 67th floor looked the same on the surface. Same glass walls. Same skyline view. Same quiet hum of keyboards and murmured strategy sessions. But the air was different. Lena Carter still sat at her desk on the 42nd floor. Same navy blazer. Same pearl earrings. Same small smile when someone said good morning. She had turned down 3 promotions. She had turned down every media request. She had even turned down the offer to speak at the firm's new Diversity and Merit Annual Summit. I'm not the story, she told Priya Patel when the interim CEO asked her to keynote. You're the one who changed it, Priya replied. Lena shook her head. I just reminded people what it was supposed to be. So the summit went on without her. But the changes stayed. The firm's risk models were audited, publicly, independently. The talent challenge was replaced with an open, transparent internal competition with real prizes and no hidden traps. Every employee, assistant, intern, analyst, executive now had access to the same training resources and data feeds. No more need-to-know silos. And quietly, without fanfare, Lena started something of her own. She used part of the $2 million to seed the Carter Financial Literacy Fund. No flashy website. No press release. Just a simple application portal open to community colleges, trade schools, and nonprofit after-school programs. The fund paid for textbooks on derivatives and risk management, laptops for students who couldn't afford them, mentorship stipends for professionals of color willing to volunteer time, bus passes so kids from outer boroughs could attend Saturday finance workshops. The first grant went to a community center in Brooklyn. 20 high school seniors learned how to read a basic candlestick chart. One of them, a girl named Maya, wrote Lena a thank you note. I used to think finance was only for rich white men in tall buildings. Now I know it's for anyone who listens long enough. Lena framed the note. She hung it on the wall above her desk. Marcus Hargrove never returned to the firm. He sold his majority stake quietly, moved to a house upstate, started teaching basic finance at a local community college, pro bono. No one knew why. He never explained. But every semester, when new students asked why he left Wall Street, he gave the same answer. I met someone who was better at listening than I was at talking. She taught me what real merit looks like. I'm still learning. One evening in July, Lena sat at her kitchen table in Brooklyn. The city lights flickered outside her window. Her phone buzzed. A news alert. Hargrove Capital announces new CEO, Priya Patel permanent. She smiled just a little. Then another buzz. A text from her sister. You see the news? You did that. Lena typed back. We did that. She set the phone down, walked to the window, looked out at the skyline, tall buildings, bright lights, people moving like ants far below. Somewhere in that sea of glass and steel, a quiet woman had once been invisible. Now she wasn't. Not because she shouted. Not because she demanded the spotlight. Because she simply refused to disappear. And in refusing, she changed everything. Not with noise. With echoes. Echoes that lasted. Echoes that would keep rippling long after the headlines faded. Long after the money was spent. Long after the man who once owned the tower stepped away. Because the best stories don't end with victory. They end with listening. And the quiet certainty that someone, somewhere, finally heard. 1 year after the challenge, The skyline hadn't changed. The tall buildings still gleamed. The city still rushed. But Lena Carter had changed the rhythm inside one of them. She still worked on the 42nd floor. Still arrived at 7:58 a.m. Still wore the navy blazer and pearl earrings. But now, when new interns asked her what she did, she answered simply, "I listen. And I remember." The Carter Financial Literacy Fund had grown quietly. Not into a flashy foundation with billboards and galas. Just more grants. More laptops. More Saturday workshops where teenagers from Brownsville and the Bronx learned to read candlestick charts and spot hidden risks in fine print. One afternoon in late December, Lena received an envelope at her desk. No return address. Just her name in careful handwriting. Inside, a single sheet of paper. A thank you note from a student who had received a grant the previous spring. "Dear Miss Carter, I used to think Wall Street was a place that laughed at people like me. Then I read about what you did. I applied for your fund. They gave me a laptop and a tutor. Now I'm in my first year at community college, majoring in finance. I want to work in a tall building one day, not to prove I belong there, but to make sure other kids like me know they do too. Thank you for showing us the chart doesn't have to be impossible. Sincerely, Maya Thompson." Yes, the same Maya who wrote you last year. I'm still reading. Lena folded the letter carefully. She placed it in the small wooden box on her desk, the one that now held dozens of similar notes. She didn't cry. She didn't smile widely. She just exhaled a long, slow breath of someone who had carried something heavy for a very long time and finally felt the weight lift, just a little. Across town, in a small community college classroom upstate, Marcus Hargrove stood at the front of a room full of adults returning to school after years away. He taught intro to financial markets. No PowerPoint. No jargon. Just a whiteboard and a marker. Today's lesson. Reading candlestick charts. He drew one slowly. "See this shadow here?" he said, pointing. "That's where the price went but didn't stay. That's risk. That's what people forget to look for." A student in the back raised her hand. "Professor Hargrove, is it true you used to run a big hedge fund?" He paused. Then he nodded. "Yes. And I learned the most important lesson from someone who never ran one." He didn't say her name. He didn't need to. The class moved on. Back in Manhattan, Lena walked out of Vanguard Tower at 5:30 p.m., earlier than usual. She took the subway home, sat in her usual corner seat, looked at her reflection in the dark window. She didn't see an executive assistant. She didn't see a viral story. She didn't see a billionaire's downfall. She saw a woman who had listened for 7 years. And when the time came, she had spoken. Just once. Just enough. The train rattled on. The city lights blurred past. And somewhere in the distance, the tall buildings kept standing. But the view from the top? It had changed forever. Because one quiet woman had refused to stay quiet when it mattered. And echoes like that? They never really stop. They just keep traveling. Through boardrooms. Through classrooms. Through late-night subway cars. Reminding everyone who listens. The chart isn't impossible. It's just waiting for someone brave enough to read it. And someone honest enough to pay what was promised. The end. Or perhaps only the beginning.